So, if you were alive in the 90s, you've probably seen or heard of the movie Pretty Woman. It's an offbeat, Cinderella esque rags to riches tale of a vivacious sex worker named Vivian, played by Julia Roberts, who is hired to attend social events by a handsome yet cold businessman, Edward, played by Richard Gere. Vivian doesn't fit into Edward's Beverly Hills world, but she charms him nonetheless, and after several great shopping montages and glorious outings, Edward falls in love with Vivian. Even if you have never seen this movie, you've probably seen it referenced in other TV shows or movies because it does have the best come up scene ever. When Vivian first goes to buy a cocktail dress on Rodeo Drive, there's these mean shop girls that tell her there is nothing in the store for her because of how she is dressed. But after some help from the manager of the Beverly Wilshire Hotel and a truly epic shopping montage, Vivian goes back to that same shop with the mean girls. She's looking super classy. And when the shop girls are all too eager to help her, Vivian mentions that she had come in the other day and they refused to help her. And then she asks them if they work on commission. And she says the iconic line, "Big mistake, huge," and walks out. Oh, but I digress. Now, you might be saying, well, yeah, Monty, of course I've seen Pretty Woman. Why are we going over the plot of this movie? Well, imagine, if you will, if this movie was set in space. And instead of a cold businessman, you had a bored, world weary Misaka Lord who is stuck in a month-long event consisting of various parties and dinners. And instead of a sex worker new to the streets of Hollywood, you had a human that was recently kidnapped from Earth and purchased for one of the guests of this huge gathering. Okay, so maybe it doesn't sound quite as nice, but if you put Ruby Dixon's spin on it, you get Pretty Human, a retelling of the 1990 movie Pretty Woman, but with our favorite blue-horned aliens. So let's take a closer look at this plot. We meet Lord Varric Varin, who is head of House Varin and the only male that carries the Varin name, which is super important because the future of his house's name and his house's fortunes depend on him and his alliances through his marriage. So Varric is on planet Kess at Lady Draniran's estate for a month-long party, which is a series of dinners, garden parties, and balls, and other little events that allow for many nobles of varying levels of importance to get together and do business deals, make alliance, and possibly secure marriage contracts. Lady Draniran is laying it on really thick. She is flashing all of her wealth, trying to impress Varric in hopes of getting a marriage proposal from him. But Varric is super uninterested and won't even let her call him by anything but his title. Varric doesn't even want to be at this party. He is completely bored and uninterested by everyone and everything, and is only there because it's what's expected of him. Lady Draniran is pretty salty about the whole name thing, but she is undeterred and she gives Varric a gift of an estate that cost a bunch of money that she knows he has been eyeing for quite some time. Varric plays it pretty cool, though. He doesn't want Lady Draniran to know how much he likes the gift, but she is not fooled. She tells him in no uncertain terms that she knows a lot about her guests, and she got them gifts accordingly. She knows their likes, their dislikes, and most importantly, she knows their secret desires. Now this piques Varric's interests, because it is always good to know the gossip about the people you're going to be having dealings with. So he lets Lady Draniran tell him all the salacious details. Lady Draniran is super excited to show Varric the alien that she has found for a certain lord, sure that he is going to be shocked and repulsed. But when Varric sees it, well, her, he sees a delicate female that has pale golden skin with bright red curling hair and no horns. He isn't quite sure what she is, but he decides that he wants her. And he tells Lady Draniran that he wants this creature, which she explains is a human, as his gift instead of the estate. Lady Draniran is pissed, but she eventually agrees to the switch. So now we meet Millie. Millie was recently purchased from the aliens that took her from Earth and has been waiting in an itchy dress to meet her new master for quite a while. She is not looking forward to any of what is about to happen. She is not stupid, and she just hopes that her new master is going to be kind to her. Okay, so quick side note, Millie has a chip implant in her head that allows her to understand the alien languages, which makes her ability to communicate much easier. I just had to make a mention of that real quick. Anyway, so Millie is taken to her new room where she sees a shadowy figure looking over a balcony. She asks who he is, but he won't give her his name because it's against protocol. Yes, it is our very own Lord Varric Varin, first of his name. So Millie asks him, "What's a rich guy like you wanting with a human chick anyway?" And from the look he gives her, she knows exactly what he wants. She starts to take off her dress, but Varric stops her and asks her if this is something she wants to do. Millie is kind of scared, thinking that this has to be a trick question. But she goes ahead and tells him no, this is not really something she wants to do. And Varric tells her that she can go ahead and keep her clothes on. There's some awkward silence between them, and then Varric decides that the best idea is to go back to Lady Draneren's party and take Millie with him. Now, this is where things get interesting. Varric pretty much ruins his noble standing in one night. He lets Millie sit next to him at his table, makes sure she has food, even though she doesn't eat it properly, lets her drink super expensive wine, and he only makes conversation with her. Now, of course, all the other Masakan nobility gossip and titter behind their hands about the spectacle. Millie, for her part, is just happy to eat. But she's also completely aware that she is not supposed to be in this situation, and what Varric is doing is going to be a stain on his reputation. She feels super out of place, and she also fears what is going to take place once the dinner is over, and decides the best way to deal with what happens next is to drink. A lot. But in true gallant fashion, Varric makes sure Millie makes it back to the room safely, even carrying her when she stumbles, much to the shock of all the guests. I mean, he actually carried a human. The outrage. He puts her to bed and then goes off and finds a chair for him to sleep in. The next morning, while Varric is still sleeping, Millie is immediately taken to his head servant and put to work shining boots. Millie, of course, greets this task with a smile and is just happy that she gets to change out of that itchy dress and finally gets a pair of shoes. But when Varric wakes up and finds that his human is gone, all hell breaks loose, and the entire household is in an uproar. Millie is immediately brought back to him, and it is made very clear that she is his companion, not a simple servant. From here, we get delightful scenes about dresses and shoes, parties, and conversations over breakfast. Millie loves the fact that Varric smiles when she uses vulgar human slang like bust your balls, and she has developed a crush on him. Millie also desires Varric, but he told her that he would not touch her unless she asked him to, because consent is paramount, even in romance stories. Remember that. And she isn't sure if he feels the same physical attraction for her. Well, her question is soon answered, but Millie hesitates because Varric still owns her. And even though she wants him, it feels wrong. They are not equals, and if they have a relationship in this way, they will always have that inequality between them. Varric explains that if he frees Millie, there is no safe place for her. There is no protection, and the government could confiscate her as a freed human. But there is one way that he could offer her protection, but it would mean the utter ruin of his family's name and probably the fall of his house. So Millie must decide if she's willing to let the man she loves give up everything he has for her. Okay, so I'm not going to spoil anything else in the book for you if you have not read it. So let's talk world building and what this little novella did for the Risdaverse. To me, this story is the linchpin that holds the Risdaverse together. First, it gives us a whole social structure of the aristocracy of the Masaka, which we really haven't seen before. This adds a whole new layer to their world. Before, we only knew that they were like a really technologically advanced race, but now we know that they have a whole nobility and a caste system, and it's wild. Plus, this story paints a broader picture of how corrupt Masakan society really is. In the original Ice Planet Barbarian series, the Sakui were like these ultimate good guys, with maybe the exception of messy ass Beck. But still, they're the good guys. this is it, and the basketball heads, those were the bad aliens. And even in Prison Planet Barbarian, which I'll be covering in another video, it is pretty much the same story. Masakan are good, most other aliens, bad. We get a small taste of how awful some of the other Masakan are in like the Alien's Mail Order Bride when we hear about Lilandra, but it's nothing like in this story. In this story, it really shows how some of the Masakan, especially like the higher ranking Masakan, turn a blind eye to the restrictions on the slave trade with the humans and how deplorable they really truly can be. This story makes the universe a little bit darker. It's a little bit muddier when it comes to who is all good and who is all bad, which is excellent for storytelling, and which is why I think the Risdaverse is so much richer than the original series. You just can't jump into a book and assume that because a character is this certain alien species, they're going to be our hero. And as we kind of find out in later books, you can't go into the book thinking, oh, they're this species, therefore they're going to be our baddie. Second, we get this whole backstory on one of the most important reoccurring side characters, Lord Varric Varin. His name is mentioned in so many other books and stories in the Risdaverse, but really you knew nothing about him. Now we know that he's this very high-ranking, noble lord, and that he is the only male of his house. That is a super important detail, especially in later books like the Corsair Brother series, where we meet other members of the Varin household and we see how Varric's decisions has really impacted their lives. Third, we understand the genesis of Risda 3. If you haven't read the story, you'll have to read it to find out. But if you know, you know. This detail really sets up the entire Risdaverse. It's the namesake for the expanded universe, and it's the catalyst for the continuation of the stories of the humans outside of the ice planet. And it's a central theme in all the other stories and series. Much like getting the backstory of Varric, we get the details behind the myth of Risda 3. Why it is settled the way it is, why was it populated the way it was, and who settled there, and what makes up everyone that's on that planet, and why would a remote outer rim planet suddenly become a refuge for humans? This story answers those questions nicely and sets up the other books and novellas in the Risdaverse in a great way. I think this, The Alien's Mail Order Bride, and The Prison Planet Barbarian are the three stories from the Risdaverse that are the easiest to read as standalone stories, and that's why I chose to start with these three for my reviews. I think if you want to go into the Risdaverse and read all the other series, start with these three. It gives you enough of a backstory that you truly understand, and you don't have to necessarily read all 22 of the Ice Planet Barbarian and Ice Home series to really understand and jump into the expanded universe. And like I said, I think the expanded universe is 10 times better. And when I say expanded universe, I mean the Risdaverse. I mean, there are great things that happen in Ice Home, and there's good things that happen in the original Ice Planet Barbarian series, but it's kind of wash, rinse, repeat. There's a couple of good things, but it kind of gets repetitive. So if you want like a darker, more gritty, realistic, in my opinion, stories, go with the Risdaverse. And these three books, if you read these three standalones, I think you can then take on any of the Risdaverse series or any of the Risdaverse standalone novels, and you're totally prepared to understand what's going on and jump right in. All right, so let's do a quick wrap up. I really like the story, if you can't tell. It's a quirky retelling of a well-known movie. It is a super fast read, and I gave it 3.5 stars on Goodreads. It's a 2.5 on the Steamy scale. You do get a one love scene with a teaser scene prior to it. So next up is going to be Prison Planet Barbarian, where we talk about all things alien species and how Ruby Dixon really sets up these series to connect in the Risdaverse. Please let me know if you have read this story, and if not, are you going to check it out? Do you think it is important to the expanded universe as I do? Let me know in the comments below. Also, do you think it's a fair adaptation of Pretty Woman? I personally love it. I think it's a great retelling. It's not a scene by scene, beat by beat retelling of it, and that's what I kind of like about it. I think it took the main idea of Pretty Woman and transformed it in a great different way that I think that only Ruby Dixon really could do. She kind of took a darker turn with it because it's set in a darker universe, obviously. But I really did enjoy it. Like I said, it is a super short read, hence why it's kind of a shorter video this time. But let me know. And if you did make it this far, thank you so much. Please consider liking this video, subscribing if you want to see some more from me. And remember to take some time for yourself. And until next time, love you. Bye.